Good morning, everyone, and you're so welcome to the sixth in our webinar series since the crisis began. We're very glad to have Network Ireland, who have branches all over Ireland and are extremely active in the Southeast, working with us today on this. There are quite a number of you with us, and we're delighted with the turnout, and we're looking forward to a really lively and engaged Q&A session. There's a Q&A box, and my colleagues will be checking that, and you can raise your hand during the Q&A session at the end to ask a question directly. So here at Southeast BIC, our tagline is supporting entrepreneurs. We don't differentiate and support everybody who comes in the door. However, when there's an obvious issue with a lack of gender diversity, it's important that we shine a light on that. And that's what today is all about. I'm going to throw out a few statistics from Enterprise Ireland that might surprise you. 30% of senior managers are women. Less than 20% of CEOs are women, falling to 9% in larger companies. Ireland has the highest gender gap in self-employment in the European Union. Less than 10% of VC funding is going to companies with female founders, and only 3% of angel investors are women. At Southeast BIC, our female clients as a percentage of our overall client base has been growing for the last few years, from 19% in 2017 to 23% in 2019. But having looked at this only yesterday, in 2020 year to date, females make up 41% of our clients this year, just showing that a crisis, even a global pandemic, never stopped anyone. Today, we are joined by women who cannot be stopped. Sharon Cunningham of Shorla Pharma, who along with her co-founder Orla Ryan recently raised 7.4 million in a Series A round led by Dublin VC Saroba, along with Enterprise Ireland for their cancer drug startup. Shorla Pharma is based in Clonmel, here in the Southeast. And by Claire Hughes, founder and serial entrepreneur with successes with NutriScience, CF Pharma, and now Telenostics, based in Kilkenny. Sheila Daly is Enterprise Ireland's entrepreneurship manager, and as such is responsible for their programme supporting females specifically. She is former head of enterprise with Wicklow Leo, so has a broad understanding of state funding and support, which she'll share some of that with us today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Southeast BIC first. Sorry for those who have been through all this before with us. I know a number of you have been on all of our webinars. And then Sheila will take us through some top line state supports. And then we will hear from our two entrepreneurs. So Southeast BIC is based here in Waterford, and we look after the 5 counties of the Southeast: Waterford, Wexford, Carlow, Kilkenny and Tipperary. We primarily work with innovative early stage startups. That is our job as funded by Enterprise Ireland. We work then a little bit with existing SMEs, and we work very closely with other state supported development agencies across the Southeast. So what we do, we support entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur is at the center of what we do. We look after entrepreneurs across all different sectors. We don't differentiate male, female, sectoral, we don't care. We just want the Southeast to do well. We work primarily around the business planning and modelling area, but our main job is to get companies investor ready. And if that's investor ready for private equity through the Halo Business Angel Network or other potential sources of private equity, or state equity via the local enterprise office, Enterprise Ireland, etc. We really want you to contact us. If you have a really good idea, or if you're at an early stage with your idea, please give us a shout. You have my email address. We want to have a chat with you. We might be able to help you directly, but we sure will direct you to people who can. So please contact us after this. If you're a female or a male in the Southeast with an innovative startup idea, we want you to get in touch. So I'm going to pass you over to Sheila for a minute. I'm going to stop sharing, and she's going to fill us in a little bit from an EI perspective. Thanks, Sheila.
Hi, everybody, and thanks very much to Rosemary in Southeast BIC for organising this today and for inviting me. So as Rosemary mentioned, this is a very, very quick, really quick whistle-stop tour around state supports. But to start out with, I suppose, just to go back to what Rosemary was saying about women in enterprise and some of the underlying figures that she mentioned. And I suppose really what that pertains to then is the reason why Enterprise Ireland spent most of last year researching and analysing and doing consultation and developing a new strategy for women in enterprise, is to address that ongoing deficit, which we believe is costing the country economically. So, you know, we had for a number of years put a very strong focus on increasing the number of women-led startups, high potential startups, and we had through a range of initiatives managed to have quite a significant impact on that. So that was on high potential startups that we were investing in that included a woman founder. And that went from only 7% in 2011 up to 22% in 2019. So, you know, the initiatives that we were taking and the very fact of actually putting a spotlight and a focus and calling it out and saying we want to do something about this had a real impact. So in terms but when we were looking at developing a new strategy and we launched our 6-year strategy for women in business earlier this year in January, it was really with a recognition that we needed to, as the national agency, to broaden out that focus. So we are now focused on 4 objectives. We are continuing, obviously, to drive an increase in the number of women-founded high potential startups. We are also looking at increasing the number of women-led companies that are trading internationally and growing via international trade. We also want to increase the number of women who become entrepreneurs. And we want to increase the number of women in leadership positions in Irish companies. I'm not going to go into detail here. There are reasons for all of these, but suffice it to say that those 4 objectives, each one, they are all interconnected, and our belief is that in order to achieve one, we really need to achieve all of them. So there is a strong connection between all 4 of those, and hence our focus on 4 objectives for the next 6 years. Underpinning each of those objectives, there are 6 actions, so 24 actions in total that we committed to getting started on this year, 2020. Now, as I said, we launched this in January. So 1 month later, we've had to kind of take a look at how much we can pragmatically expect to achieve this year. But there is still a very strong focus on all of the objectives and a strong commitment to keep driving this strategy. And we are working away on a number of the actions at the moment. So that just sort of sets the scene. And if you want to get a copy, the link to where you can obtain a copy is on this slide, and I'm happy for these slides to be shared with you. So I was asked to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of state supports. Any of you that are doing your own research and involved in this area and are interested in starting a business or have already started a business will know there is a huge amount of support out there, sometimes perhaps almost a confusing amount. So, but what I'm talking about here very much are the state supports, and the main 2 elements of state supports come from Enterprise Ireland and the local enterprise offices. So in relation to Enterprise Ireland, and again, I'm just focusing, by the way, on very early stage and startups here, not for established businesses. So in terms of Enterprise Ireland, the advisory and development supports that are out there for startups, we run the flagship national entrepreneurship program, which is New Frontiers. And we do that in collaboration with the Institutes of Technology across the country. And this program it operates in 3 phases, and it's very much targeted at people who have an idea, perhaps maybe have done already some initial work on researching whether there is some potential with this idea. But phase 1, New Frontiers, which is on a part-time basis, and as I said, there are institutes across the country offering this particular program, helps you to investigate whether or not your idea may have commercial potential. And then phase 2 is when you decide, yeah, it does have commercial potential, and now I'm going to commit full time to actually getting this business off the ground and getting it started. And then there's a whole range of mentorship, training, incubation support available to you through the Institutes of Technology that you're working with. We also run a number of programs that are specifically targeted at women. I've just mentioned a couple there, DCU High Flyers, which is an accelerator program. Cork Institute of Technology run the Excel program targeting very early stage startups. Innovate is run by CBIC's sister agency, Dublin BIC, and that is specifically an accelerator for women who have been approved competitive start fund. And we also support the delivery of Going for Growth, which is a mentoring, networking, entrepreneur-led program, which some of you may be familiar with, and where you can, there's a starting strong category for those that are at the startup stage within that program. Business innovation centers, clearly Rosemary has given you a very good overview of the supports available through them. And just to say, as I said, there is a lot out there. So that on our website, you can get this information store for startups, which will guide you to other sources of information, as well as providing lots and lots of templates and market information and how to do market research, all that kind of thing. So that link will take you to that. Local enterprise offices, many of you may be familiar with them already. They are situated in the local authorities, which means they are very locally based. There's 31 of them. And again, a huge range of supports there, but in terms specifically of startups, they will offer the signposting and information service. You can also make an appointment and get free one-to-one business advice to discuss your idea, to find out what your next steps might be. All of the local enterprise offices offer Start Your Own Business courses. So in normal times, I suppose that means that in your local area, there is a course for you to go to, a face-to-face course. At the moment, most of them are offering these courses online. And most of them also support women in business networks, which is, again, a great resource. It's a lonely place to be at times when you're, especially at the very early stages. So these women in business networks really are a fantastic resource. And just to set a shout out to Network Ireland, who are obviously a national as well as county and regional based network for professional women. And I think I would strongly recommend looking at becoming a member of Network Ireland. And just there on the right-hand corner there, supporting SMEs online tool, the Department of Enterprise have developed this. It is essentially a searchable database. You click on that link, you put in where you are, what you're doing, the sector you're in, the stage you're at, and it will provide you with a list of potential state supports available to you, because obviously there are others that I haven't gone into here, from Bord Bia, from Chugas, from Bordish Gwara, across the board. There are a lot of supports out there. So this will help you to navigate what might be potentially available for you. In terms of funding then, again, I'm focusing on essentially the LEOs and Enterprise Ireland here. And again, very much this is early stage startup funding. So from the local enterprise offices, you're talking about feasibility study funding, which is up to €15,000, 50% match funding. And that is to develop out and seek out whether you have a commercial proposition, or indeed to develop an innovation or an invention. The priming grant from the local enterprise offices, which is up to 80,000, again, 50% funded, that is to actually get the business started, get it up off the ground, employ people, purchase capital equipment, that kind of thing. New Frontiers, the funding element of New Frontiers is for phase 2. So this is where you've committed. I'm going to go spend 6 months full-time working on this business. And you get a stipend from Enterprise Ireland of €2,500 per month to support you over that period. The Competitive Start Fund, some of you may be familiar with, and just to say that this is a fund where we also have a very specific ring-fenced fund for women entrepreneurs. And this is a €50,000 investment by Enterprise Ireland in an early stage innovative startup that has the potential to grow and has the potential to export. And just to say, we are currently working on the next call, and I expect that will be announced in July. So just keep an eye on our website for that call. And I'm sure as well that Rosemary will send out an email to let people know about it. The BICs also do a lot of support for the CSF fund in terms of advising people who want to apply for it. and I think run workshops on how to apply for it and all of that. So it's actually just, that's important to say, because that's a really strong support there that's available to you if you're going to apply for the Competitive Start Fund. I'd advise you to take up that support. Overall then, are high potential startups, and again, just to say, high potential startups are the type of startups that Enterprise Ireland supports. And these must be startups that are in an innovative service or product area that has the potential for export or internationally traded service, and will grow to over €1 million and 10 employees within 3 years of starting. And our supports, I'm not going to go through all of the supports there, but there are feasibility study supports, and clearly we also invest in high potential startup companies. I also think it's worth mentioning the commercialization funds and Horizon 2020. We have a very strong role to play in commercializing research that's being done. So if you're working as a researcher, if you're in the third level sector and you've developed an idea or an invention and you think, you know what, this really has commercial potential, what do I do now? Well, what you do now is talk to us, because we're very interested in investing in inventions and ideas and innovations coming out of third level, and there's very significant funding and support to develop those and turn them into a commercially viable business. Horizon 2020, I'm just putting it out there, it's a very important source of research funding and development funding, and it's available to startups and SMEs. We will be actually, my colleagues in the H2020 unit are developing a workshop specifically targeting women who are women entrepreneurs and women running enterprises who might be interested in securing part of this H2020 funding. And that workshop, I'm not sure, will probably be in July as well. But again, we can ask Southeast BIC to send out a notification of that. I'm mentioning two others here that are obviously not EI or LEO, but I think it's important for you to be aware of them if you're not. One is the Startup Refund for Entrepreneurs. This is a revenue scheme. This is very important if you're starting a business, setting up a limited company, and you're going to be investing some of your own cash into that company, and you previously were in a PAYE job. You can actually get some of the tax that you paid over the previous 6 years back from the revenue commissioners to invest in your company. So that is something well worth looking into if you are in that situation. And then back to work enterprise allowance. This is obviously for any of you that may currently be in receipt of some social welfare payment and you're going to set up your business and get your business started. This allows you to keep your social welfare payments and possibly most of your secondary benefits also for the first year while you're starting up the business, and then on a sliding scale for the second year. So that brings me to the end of my whistle-stop tour. As I said, just an overview, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. Thank you.
That's great, Sheila. Thanks a million. And yeah, per that CSF fund, which is opening in July, we'll be running a workshop with candidates for that. So we'll be in touch with you all. Anyone who is registered will be in touch with you all specifically on that, as it's a female call. So it's worth keeping an eye on your email for that. So we want to talk to our entrepreneurs now and hear directly from the horse's mouth. Sorry, Claire, there's a pun for you. And I want to ask Claire, starting out with Claire, might give us an idea and an insight into yourself and your background and your business and what you do, just to give everybody a flavour of who we're talking to. You're mute, Claire.
Hi everybody, thanks Rosemary for organising this. It's great to sort of make contact. It's been a lonely place for the last couple of months. I started out I suppose nearly 20 years ago. So I was a pharmacist by profession, really my whole generation of businesses have been from a need and a gap in the market. Unlike Sharon, probably started always a bit smaller, and we had intrinsic growth. Currently, at the moment, my business, we have 3 businesses here in Kilkenny. We have a 16,000 square foot facility in an ISO 13485 medical device facility, and we export to around 35 countries. It was a startup around 5 years ago, and we employ 50 people now. The other part is Telenostics, which is a diagnostic. It's a really innovative diagnostic medical device that we did via the innovation partnership with Enterprise Ireland and UCD, and we have a whole team of scientists in UCD working on it. And then we're also the third part of the business is the veterinary side. So it's all been very much intrinsic growth. Everything Sheila said, I think I have partaked on over the years. So, I mean, I think I've ticked every box, from the Frontiers to the Leos to the Mentors to working with you, Rosemary, and CBEC back in the day, and Aidan, and then Enterprise Ireland as well. So I must say I found CBEC and the Leos really accessible at a very startup level. And I sold my business in 2010, and when I went to start up again in 2013-14, I was actually back at stage 1 again. And the hardest part of it is to get 2, 3, 4 people working for you, because you end up doing everything yourself. It's a lonely place to be. And Leo and CBEC, they're so important in terms of, you know, giving yourself a profile, thinking outside the box, showing you that you basically can do it. I think Enterprise Ireland gave me a mentor 18 years ago who still does my accounts for me. So there's really long-term, even though the grants can be short-term, the long-term alliances that you get within your business startups are the things that actually made you. And that's actually what has made one business to the other successful for me, is the alliances I've made along the way. And the one thing I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years is I haven't done it half enough. You know, the businesses, you know, the local Chamber of Commerce awards, the things that you don't know that's happening in the Southeast are amazing. And I think in the last recession, the Southeast was left a little bit behind. So by having these group chats and working together, and we're definitely all stronger together than we are apart. And for sure, I always feel that we're a very, very small part of a pharma business, but I don't need a huge business. I just need a very small corner of any page to be successful. And if I can ally with other companies with similar motivations and strategies, well, then I will be successful.
Yeah, that's great, Claire. Thanks for that overview. And obviously we worked with Claire over periods of time over the last few years. And it's great when you see a company expand and grow and take on people and employ the likes of 50 people in Kilkenny is worth 1,000 people in Dublin as regards the impact on the economy. And I know Shorla Pharma, we're going to come to Sharon now and ask her to give us a little brief update on what's happening within Shorla. Very exciting times over the last few months.
Definitely, Rosemary, and thank you very much for the invite to be here today, and I'm delighted to share the Shorla journey so far. So I co-founded Shorla Pharma in 2018 with Orla Ryan, having worked together previously for 7 years at Airgen Pharma in Waterford. Shorla Pharma is a specialty pharmaceutical company developing innovative oncology drugs focusing on women's and children's cancers. We focus on areas of unmet need where existing treatments are limited, in shortage, or inadequate for the target population. So basically, we take existing treatments that are proven to be safe and efficacious, and we do something novel with them to make them better. We're based in Questum Acceleration Centre in Clonmel, which is a fantastic facility, and it's very, very close to the local enterprise office there as well, which was very convenient for us. Orla and I, we're like-minded individuals, but we have a very complementary skill set. So I bring the finance, I'm a chartered accountant with an MBA, and Orla brings the science as a chartered scientist and biochemist, and she mastered in regulatory affairs. So we've just announced our €7.5 million Series A round, as Rosemary said at the beginning, and the lead investor was Saroba Life Sciences VC. We're very, very pleased to have them on board. And the round also included participation from Enterprise Ireland. So while we started with the local enterprise office and we got a huge range of support, both funding and other supports from the local enterprise office, we moved on then when the time was right to Enterprise Ireland.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the supports as we go along, because between Claire and Sharon, I think every single thing on Sheila's list will be ticked off, including, you know, IBYE, European projects, like the whole gamut of funding and other supports has been availed by these two entrepreneurs. Claire, you and I had a chat during the week, or yesterday, and you were telling me about what's going on in your businesses during the last couple of months, and the difficulties and then the upsides of that. So how has CF Pharma / Telenostics managed throughout this last 3 months of crisis?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing when you're starting and you're being an entrepreneur, for sure, being manic depressive wouldn't be a good skill, because things go up and down. One day you think you're going to be a millionaire, and the next day you're just hoping to feed the troops in a Friday. So, and it goes in that it just, you know, it depends and it switches. But it's also the thing that I actually really find enjoyable. But you have to be dynamic. A business plan should never be static. And you can only control the things you can't control. You can control, but the environment and what has happened in the last 3 or 4 months, you know, nobody really saw it coming. From our point of view, we have on the Telenostics, we're just going to field trials, and there has been challenges there because they're international field trials, so travel is difficult. But on the veterinary and the human side, the veterinary side has taken a kicking because we have very complementary therapies and prophylactic treatments as opposed to medications. So therefore, there hasn't been so much access to veterinary clinics for that type of medication. But on the other side, we had been making wound irrigation solutions for hospitals with a really innovative sort of, it's based on hypochlorous, and it's an antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal product that has really super efficacy, but the safety profile is uncomparable to anything that's out there. So we licensed this technology in around 4 or 5 years ago, and we have a class 2 and in process a class 3 medical device file. But that allowed us to jump off into the biocide route, and of late we're looking at tendering into all the schools for supply, because at the moment the side effects associated with alcohol, whether they're sanitizers, whether they're intended or unintended, even to do with dermatitis, are huge. So the risk analysis for the education and for everybody to get back to work is hugely negative in that area. So I think we provide a solution. So I think the thing that you have to be is just hugely dynamic, always looking at your USP. We didn't jump into, for instance, the alcohol sanitization thing too deeply, because I never wanted to compete on price. But so you constantly have to look at your business. Sometimes when you're starting up, it's a lonely place, and it's hard enough to get out of your, you know, to have a helicopter vision of yourself, because suddenly you're in love with your product and you think everybody else should be as well. So it becomes a 360 encompassing thing. So I think, you know, doing something like this, getting other people's views on board, making your mind a bit more dynamic, and you know, seeing what the likes of Sharon has done, which is amazing in terms of that sort of funding, and having people that you can sort of share your burden with. I was lucky enough at the very start of my career, I teamed up with another lady, Louise Grubb, and we very much had complementary skill sets as well. So I think that really helps.
Absolutely. And Sharon, the last couple of months for you obviously shows that you can get funding during a pandemic. I think if anything else, getting 7.5 million in funding in the height of the pandemic shows the quality of what's happening within Shorla. But obviously there's more going on outside of just the pure funding that you've been going through.
Thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, and we've been very fortunate at Shorla, because pharma is considered an essential service in every country. So we've been able to operate as normally. So for the most part, it has been business as usual. The team is embracing working from home, and we're finding new ways to stay connected and so on, like everybody else around the world. And as you said, we even managed to close our funding round right in the middle of the pandemic. So we're very grateful for that, and it was a huge relief, as you can imagine. Of course, we're scenario planning for potential delays that may be associated with COVID. For example, a clinical trial that we have due to start later in the year, there may be some recruitment delays with that. In addition to the fact that the Food and Drugs Authority, the FDA in the US, the regulatory authority, have focused a lot of their attention on COVID-related issues. So there may be some issues around that as well. But we remain hopeful that our products will be assessed by the regulators in line with the original plan nonetheless, given that they're life-saving treatments. And in particular, one of them is actually in shortage globally. So we're very hopeful and we're very optimistic about the future, but at the same time, all the time planning for potential delays and so on.
And Sheila, obviously within Enterprise Ireland, you've been experienced, you have a view of a huge cross-section of businesses that have been struggling possibly throughout the last 12 months, and then others seeing the upside. Have there been a lot of difficulties with companies around funding particularly?
Well, I think it's the usual answer to this. I suppose it really depends on the sector and it depends on the stage and all of the rest of it. I mean, obviously a lot of established companies that we're working with, it's a different aspect of funding, but cash flow funding is a massive issue for a lot of companies. Some may have had some level of cushioning prior to Q2 because of invoice work that they still had to come in, and indeed, perhaps some element of preparation for Brexit in the lead up and so forth. Q3 is looking difficult for some companies as a result of that. Others suffered immediately from cash flow issues in Q2. So I suppose that's one aspect of funding, which obviously the government has been addressing with a significant amount of support, particularly through the temporary wage subsidy scheme, but also then through the SBCI, COVID working capital loan, and other forms of finance directly from Enterprise Ireland, like the Sustaining Enterprise Fund. In terms of companies accessing funding at a startup stage, I mean, it's not anecdotally what I would be hearing is that the angel investment piece may be somewhat more risk averse at this point. So there may be a little bit of contraction in the amount of angel investment available. But as I said, that's just anecdotal. And then in relation to VCs, again, they are working the capital that they have, but they may be potentially looking at sort of investing maybe in further investments, retaining some of it for further investments in existing investments that they already have.
Yeah.
Or indeed, there could be some pricing issues for their first round investments just because of the nature of the environment at the moment. But again, as I said, I don't have stats on that. It's kind of anecdotal things that people have been saying to me.
Yeah, and we would be hearing similar stories definitely around the angels. But yet, rather than cancelling elements, it's more postponement or slight delays that are happening rather than complete and utter pulling back.
Yeah, no, there isn't a complete withdrawal.
Yeah, so we're very much hoping.
Obviously, the state funding is there, and we're continuing to be very active in that space. Enterprise Ireland are, the local enterprise offices are, obviously the national government, as I said, with a massive new round of funding that was announced there in response to COVID. So, it is possible to get funding.
Okay, and I think it was Steve Blanker, one of these American lean gurus, said good startups don't fund themselves, and we've just kind of touched on the funding element, especially with Shorla, and everybody knows the financial sacrifices that an entrepreneur makes themselves. But I suppose what I'd love to hear from the two entrepreneurs, and maybe starting with you, Claire, is the funding journey that you've gone on with your companies over the years, or how you have managed to maximize that funding journey over the period of time.
Yeah, well, a lot of our growth has been intrinsic growth, and I think Sharon probably is much better qualified in terms of, so I'm a pharmacist, and I actually had all my knowledge in terms of finance is more learned. We were lucky enough to have Billy Power, who was a mentor, who's worked with me for years. But our funding has been grants, sort of Horizon 2020s, Enterprise Ireland, and not big equity investment other than when we're sort of selling companies and things. I have always been, I suppose, conservative in my growth strategy, and always sort of, I am actually a risk taker, but I suppose it's a calculated risk. So when you do something and you put all your eggs in one basket, it's I suppose, a lot more pressure. And from that reason, I have never actually taken in VC funding. It's not something I'm opposed to, but it never played to my strength. And we were lucky enough, because because I'm that much older than Sharon, that it's taken me that long to get here. So yeah, I mean, it's I think if you know what's out there and you see what suits your business, and if you're trying to, I mean, to do what the likes of Shorla are doing is really a huge ask. We've set up a medical device facility, which actually was fairly difficult as well. But I was lucky enough that I was in the position after selling my previous company that I didn't need other people on board. So I'd say Sharon is probably better in terms of the larger VC type of funding, better placed than me to answer the question. I've grown by intrinsic growth a little bit more conservatively, and definitely a lot slower, but we get there in the end.
Absolutely. And I think what was really interesting point you made there is that, you know, you're a pharmacist, and so you had to rely on the skills and supports of other people in order to direct you around, you know, the likes of the legendary Billy Power and people like that to support that process for you. And it just shows that not all supports are financial, and we'll get back to that in a minute, but not all supports that are crucial to an entrepreneur starting out are financial supports. And Sharon, Claire's...
Hi, Rosemary. I think CBEC was actually the first person who actually helped us put a plan in together when we actually jumped from Leo to Enterprise Ireland. I think it was 15, 16 years ago. He actually put it together for me at the time, and it was the first time that I'd looked at a lot of terms. So I don't think you have to be a quiz on anything. There is supports out there, and I think if you're good technically, you have a good technical idea, for sure the rest is doable.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon, Claire has put all the pressure on you now, so you're going to have to educate us on the funding side.
No problem. And just to say, I suppose we did start fairly small as well. We started with nothing. We left our jobs in December 2017, Orla and I. We invested our savings into the business. And then we, in order to generate cash in the meantime, then we went and we did consultancy work on the side while we were developing our business plan. So we actually ended up, both of us, going back to Irgen on a consultancy basis for a period of time. We were then very lucky to get Leo funding, and that was really fantastic. We got the priming grant, we got help with our website, we got support to go on an overseas trip. So it was like the technical assistance for micro exporters. We actually got 2 of those grants. And so all those, even though they were relatively small amounts, you know, 5,000 here and there, they were really helpful at the time. And then that led us on to being able to attract strategic investment from 2 strategic investors with a background in our area, one of whom is a large supplier of active pharmaceutical ingredients. So it was very key in terms of us being able to source small quantities of raw materials cost effectively and easily, that we wouldn't have been otherwise able to do. So that strategic investment then led us on to our journey towards, well, I suppose first of all, what happened in between was the kind of the non-funding support, so that came with the Leo. So for example, winning Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur, the iBuy competition, which was a fantastic competition, gave us a huge experience in pitching, and there was a lot of scrutiny of our business plan associated with that. It prepared us really well. So, you know, we didn't have to win it in order to gain a huge amount from the process. It was really well run. I'd highly recommend it to any business starting out to enter the competition. But it also, you know, set us up really well for our Series A round. So, as I said, we closed that very recently, and Enterprise Ireland are part of that round. So, and we then, in terms of other supports that Enterprise Ireland can provide us with, we're looking towards using their office facilities, for example, in the US, while we set up our own office. And so it's not just about funding, there's a huge amount of other aspects with it as well. We were very fortunate to get non-dilutive funding via Leo, and it actually was north of 100,000 in the end, albeit 55,000 euro if that was the iBuy winnings. But we're very, very grateful, and so far so good.
Yeah, I think it's great to see both the entrepreneurs. Some entrepreneurs try to jump very quickly into the seed and Series A stuff, and it's great to see how two very successful entrepreneurs have used all the supports available at that really early stage. So that Leo funding stage is so important. Claire, I remember with you, and we were talking from Sheila's list there, European funding, and you guys won an award within the Smart Agri-Food European project a number of years ago within the development of telenostics. That was very
no, the European funding have been great, has been really, really good. It's hard enough to access, so you definitely need to link in with Enterprise Ireland to know what they want. It's completely different than writing a business plan. It's very much academically based on the wants. And I think anybody starting a company is very commercial, and you nearly have to take that sort of hat off and put on another hat. And Enterprise Ireland they have super guys in the team there. We won that Smart Agri, we won it outright over Europe, and we're going to actually submit another Horizon 2020 for the female-led call I think it's in September, October time. So you actually can't do it without Enterprise Ireland, apart from the fact they have to nominate it. You really need to get speaking to them at an early stage, otherwise you're in completely the wrong direction. The other thing Enterprise Ireland do when you're looking at this is they have a huge amount of knowledge. So the guy we use for our IP, our intellectual property, the solicitor we have used for contracts, a lot of the agreements that we have used have been templates and contacts that we've got from Enterprise Ireland. So I think Sharon said too about the overseas offices. I think we've used nearly everyone in Europe at the moment. So when we find a distributor in, I don't know, Pakistan, for instance, and do you know them, and they check them out and they come back to us with, are they good, bad or ugly? And really it's very, very difficult to do that. We've done Arab Health there for the last 3 or 4 years with Enterprise Ireland, and you meet all these guys from different countries, and it's impossible to triage who's good and who's not. And it's not you just waste a huge amount of time trying to do that yourself, and going with the wrong distributor, the wrong contact in countries is a kiss of death to your product. So there's so many different ways that they can help you over and above funding. But to answer your question, the European funding, speak to Enterprise Ireland at an early stage. They send them your business plan. They'll actually tell you very quickly whether you're in with the shot or not, and then then you have to completely rethink what you're doing and take all their advice that they can give you.
Okay, brilliant. And speaking of other supports, and that being one of them, Sharon, we were chatting during the week, and you were talking about the HPSU Founders Forum, which is for Enterprise Ireland clients who have been invested by Enterprise Ireland, and how you had found that even because selling and networking during this 12 weeks has been tricky for everybody, getting out and about. I was dealing with a client over the last few days who's really struggling to meet new clients. It's an early stage company. They're not fully established, and trying to get out and meet people when you can't go out on site is really, really difficult. And Sharon and I were having a conversation around the same thing about networking, and how you feel that the online networking has actually leveled the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, well, for me, I found it's worked really, really well. So I find that it's a lot more targeted. So you go online to a webinar or whatever it is, and you meet 20 or 30 different people. Everybody introduces themselves. You're looking at everybody. It's not like walking into a room where you're kind of running around trying to hand out business cards. you know who you want to follow up with, and you can do it then straight away via LinkedIn or whatever. So it's really, really useful. And I hope that, you know, these webinars will continue. I know it's about a balance, and it definitely is nice to meet people face to face as well. But certainly I've been really pleasantly surprised about how well it has worked for me in particular. And then in terms of the Founders Forum, again, I wasn't sure how that was going to work because it's all virtual now. And normally it's in person, and it's a full day or a half day event held in Dublin where you get to meet other founders and share your problems and your challenges and your successes and so on. So we've had 2 of the meetings so far, and they've been for a half day, and I found them absolutely brilliant. So a few things. One of the first sessions was we had to present our business model canvas, which is a snapshot of your business and where it is right now. And then we all discussed it and we challenged each other. We were able to do these breakout rooms on Zoom as well, which I didn't know about, but very, very useful, really well structured, really well disciplined actually. And you know, that I find you keep to the times better and so on. And it's just very focused sessions. I felt I get a lot out of them, and just very helpful and thought-provoking in general. So I look forward to that continuing. Look forward to meeting people in face-to-face, obviously, in due course. But for now, it's a wonderful way of networking.
Excellent. And speaking about that, like internationalizing your businesses, I'm Claire, you're selling into Europe, into Asia. What challenges or any advice you would have for companies who are starting to look at that export piece?
Number one, on everything, and it doesn't mean, even if you're not medical, regulatory affairs. So no point launching a product that doesn't have a regulatory background and a strategy. And even if you're doing testing, marketing, I suppose know your business, know your market, and get the advice of the experts so you know where it goes. There is no point, you don't make money in the first year, you're there for longevity, and you need to have a good platform on which to grow your business. And that's about certainty. So ensuring that your trademarks are right, your IP is right, your regulatory strategy is right, and as much as possible, your positioning is right. Enterprise Ireland can really help from that point of view as well. So they have done studies on specific markets, on competitor products in very targeted areas. So when you don't have the wherewithal to get that sort of information, they're a great resource.
Okay, brilliant. And Sharon, I know it's earlier days for you. You're a little bit earlier in the process, but your internationalization plans, obviously you mentioned that you're going to hopefully use the EI office in New York to kick you off, but long term, what's your internationalization plan?
Yeah, so definitely early days for us, but knowing your market extremely well is so important. And I think I'm really encouraged to hear Claire's comment there on the importance of regulatory affairs. I'm really lucky that that's Orla's speciality. So that's worked so very well so far for us in terms of our regulatory strategy and breaking into the market. Navigating the US market for us, in particular for niche cancer drugs, it's a huge challenge, but we spend a lot of time on the ground in the US. Well, we did when we could fly there, and we will again, hopefully soon. We engage very early on with the key stakeholders. So they are the prescribing oncologists, hospital pharmacists, payers, and key opinion leaders to ensure that our drugs will be prescribed and, even more importantly, reimbursed by the payers. It's a very complex market. Nowadays, now that we have our funding and so on, and we're kind of good to go, we spend a lot of time on our commercialization strategy, performing market access studies for each drug, engaging in discussions with specialty distributors, and planning the legal and financial tax aspects of the US entity, along with planning the recruitment of key hires. So I suppose in short, I believe that planning, and it's never ever too early to start, planning is key to successfully internationalizing your business.
Okay, excellent. And I'm going to ask kind of the last question to both of you, and it's a bit of an obvious one, but I always love the answer to these questions because sometimes you get really interesting bits of information. So what advice would you give another female entrepreneur? And I know we've been talking about entrepreneurship really more so than female entrepreneurship today because, you know, you guys are going to succeed irrespective. But any advice, Sharon, we'll kick off with you. Any advice you'd give to somebody or give to yourself 5 years ago?
Yeah, no problem. Number one, find an informal and confidential mentor that you can trust, someone that you admire, who can help you when you need it. You'll be surprised really at how willing successful people are to help you out if you ask for it. Secondly, be really conscious of branding, and not just the company or the product branding, but also your personal brand. Identify what makes you unique and stand out from the crowd, and embrace it every single day. People make connections with people. They don't make connections with companies. And I can't emphasize that enough. Spending sufficient time planning and developing your business plan, seeking the appropriate mentoring and advice, that's definitely been key for us, as has surrounding us with people who have done it before, people who have funded, developed and commercialized products in the past. And we keep very close to those people. And then I suppose more specifically aimed towards the women, because I think all of those initial points were probably, whether you're a man or a woman, they're all important things. Above all, I think we're in the minority, so we have to be confident. And in a negotiation scenario, we have to remember our worth, know it very well, and stand our ground. And if we're determined enough, my experience tells me that we can succeed.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Sharon. Brilliant. Claire.
I'd emulate a lot of what Sharon says. A couple of things about the key people that you surround yourself with. I've met, it's about the person. It's not about even their qualification. We have 4 women actually on the key management team with us, not a man in sight. Sorry, Aidan. And one of them, the key person I've been working with, she's probably the best person I've ever worked with, but she had no primary qualification. She's gone on to do postgrads and degrees and various things with Enterprise Ireland. But a good person is a really good person, and a person who cares, and a person who has your back, and a person who will, you know, when something happens, will actually work out the problem, not that it's not that area. So you have to be personally involved. They have to love your business. They have to love your product. When you're doing something, your product has to have a USP. It has to have something. You can't start a business on pricing. You can't, it's very difficult to start a generic business. In terms of Ireland, you have to look at internationalization at an early stage. So then that has to be looking at your positioning and your regulatory strategy to get out there, because the Irish market is only the same size as basically Birmingham and Manchester. So you really have to look at how you're going to make it bigger than the local market. Find somebody who knows. You don't have to know everything, but find somebody who is specialized in your area for every, so, you know, when you're starting up, you don't have to know about the clinical, the regulatory, the manufacturing, the quality assurance, but link up with people who know more than you, and then try to manage them. For sure, if you can get a really good mentor who has your back, it's fantastic. And there are so many good local people. I think I was just saying to you yesterday, Rosemary, last week, I only picked up the phone to a guy called Michael Brannigan. A lot of them would know him, but I sort of thought of him as Brannigan's haulage, and he has this company called PRL with 1,200 people, vertically integrated from the whole logistics. I had no idea what he had done because I'd known him forever. So, and their team are amazing, and it's amazing who's on your doorstep, especially there with Sharon. I mean, there's so many good, especially pharma entrepreneurs in the Waterford area, and they're always only willing to give you as much of their time. I mean, there's loads of them, and you never know what links that it can help you with. And most of the things that I've actually done well have come out of coincidences. So for instance, my very first business, I got connected with a distributor in Denmark, who's the largest pig producer in Denmark, but I found him at a horse show. So you never know where things come from, but just follow them up and be tenacious. And I don't find it that much harder being a woman, but I do think that life can get in your way with regards to other things that happen. And, you know, I think on my headstone when I die, it's like I mightn't have been very talented at anything, but God, I died trying.
I love it. Excellent. Sheila, I'm sure you can relate to a lot of what the folks, the Sharon and Claire have said about, getting support externally and getting mentors and building that network and building a network of people that know more than you and that you can trust. And I'm sure you see that within the whole female entrepreneurship world all the time.
Yeah, well, I think, they've said it far better than I ever could, and they've lived it too, which I recognize. But look, I mean, from my experience over many, many years of working with entrepreneurs and working professionally as well, I mean, yes, it is becoming less. I think the importance of networks is the same whether you're a man or you're a woman, but I think it's almost heightened for women because there are other factors and we certainly see it with our Going for Growth program, that the participants on that program would say that there are particular benefits to having, if you like, a group of women that they can discuss their specific challenges and so on with. But that network of influencers and suppliers and potential customers and just contacts is so important if you're trying to get a business up off the ground. And again, reverting back to that is one of the many reasons why one of our new objectives is to try to increase the number of women in leadership positions in Irish companies, because we know that if you have senior management experience, you're more likely to have the access to networks. You're more likely to see an opportunity anyway to start a business, and then you're more likely to have that access to networks to help you support you to get that business up off the ground. So yeah, I mean, in terms of that, the other thing I would say is that relentless focus on the customer really is key. It's very difficult to, you need to be very energetic. You need to be able to put an awful lot of time in at an early stage of a startup. You need to be passionate about it, but at the end of the day, somebody has to buy what you're selling. And you really need to keep that in mind all of the time. And I think Claire said it when she said, don't fall in love with your product. It has to be something that somebody wants to pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do see, especially at the early stage, people getting very wedded to their idea. And that's how I loved hearing you talking about the business model canvas, Sharon, because we use that an awful lot with clients rather than jumping headlong into this extensive business plan that's a static document. And Claire mentioned the whole needing to be dynamic and needing to keep moving and changing and not getting stuck and attached to something. And this big business plan can be something that you feel like you've put your heart and soul into and you're sticking with it no matter what. So we prefer to start with that business model canvas to go and test those assumptions and put the customer at the center of it rather than continually plowing down potentially the wrong road. So that's one of the services that we offer with our clients, is that we would facilitate a session. We're doing them online at the moment, which is kind of interesting. It's a little bit different than getting up and doing it with the whiteboard, but it's working so far. So we have a couple of questions in. Aidan, you are there. You have a couple of questions, haven't you?
Yep.
Here's our token man.
Oh, thanks very much. glad to be of help. No, lots of positive comments coming in, how inspirational the guys are on the panel, and thanks from all the attendees for the inspiration and the nuggets of information. Quite a lot of questions and comments, and I'm not sure who to direct this towards, around enterprises with purpose, social entrepreneurs, and the role female entrepreneurs play in this particular sector. And there's questions around where do these type of enterprises go for support, and how can they tap into supports that are available. Now, I know that we ourselves are involved in a European project called SUNSE. It's around social entrepreneurship. So I think we can provide some information, Rosemary, in the email that goes out after this webinar, and we can summarize some of the supports that are available to social entrepreneurs there as well, and how the SUNSE project maybe is helping social entrepreneurs there as well. So yeah, maybe not a question per se, but we can deal with that afterwards. Absolutely. In a follow-up email.
Yeah, I have one here that says, great to hear the backgrounds from the panelists. What keeps you going when times get tough? Claire, what keeps you going? Your horses and your children. You're mute.
When actually the hardest thing I've found with the COVID thing is that yeah, I haven't been doing the things that I normally do, and I'm 24/7 in the business for the last 3 or 4 months, which actually becomes fear. You need to be able to stop thinking about it, and not be doing emails at 2 o'clock in the morning in your head. You know, it's so really when times get tough, actually to walk out of the office and think of what other way to attack the problem. And what other way can you solve it? There's always a way to do it. Maybe you're just in blind. And I must say the balance that, you know, working on the farm and working with the horses, and the fact the horses are working with my kids are just an added benefit. It just gets me out of my own head. I'm a bit of an intense person, and you know, I'm a much better person when I'm balanced. So I suppose to give it a break. So, and try to think of it from another point of view to solve the problem, because for sure, closing the door and stressing out about it working in your office is not going to solve it, whatever that is, whether it's a customs problem, a regulatory problem, a stock problem, or even a financial problem. It's just thinking outside the box.
Okay. Sharon, give us your insight there.
Thanks for that, Claire, and I definitely agree. It's become way too easy to stay working late into the night. You know, you're set up at home, and what I found over the last few months, I've worked a lot harder than I've ever probably worked as a result of it. So I need to listen to some of Claire's advice, definitely. But I think what helps me, and Orla would say the same, having a co-founder to share the burden in the really tough times has really helped, because there's been lots of really tough situations and lots of downs, but equally lots of successes as well. And it's really nice to have somebody to celebrate the successes with as well. I know not everybody has a co-founder, but for me, in our situation, that has worked really well. Also, I have 3 little boys at home, so yeah, I don't have time to think about, you know, some of these stresses all the time, because I do need to focus on them as well, and that's really helpful, actually. So
yeah. It tends to help the balance, I think. There's quite a number of questions around funding for social enterprises, and asking them directly around EI. EI doesn't fund not-for-profit enterprises. So I think Siobhan, our colleague Siobhan, who's working on the Sunset project, has given some contact details there for anybody in around the social side of things, or the not-for-profit side of things. Some people are asking about more of the information that is on Sheila's slides, the lists of funding support. So we'll definitely share those, if that's okay, Sheila. That'd be great. And I think that's pretty much it on the questions. So, I'm just having a look.
Yeah, I think we just kind of amalgamated.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions that were on there. There's one area, and I'm loath to bring it up, I suppose, but it was brought up by somebody in the chat function, and it was have you encountered kind of male toxicity through your career, and or you know, that kind of barrier to developing your business? Is that the attitude that some men have in terms of what way I don't want to put words in this person's mouth. So it's great to hear from successful women. What I'm finding difficult in business is dealing with businessmen thinking they are above women, and the whole boys club scenario. Have you encountered this, and how do you deal with it? And we can't label all men like this. I hasten to add. Is that right, Rosemary?
Yeah.
Is it an issue? Have you encountered this?
I think you see it. My first partner, and still partner with her, I won't mention her name, is an old-fashioned guy. He's quite old, but he's hugely successful in the vaccine world, and he's promoted me all the way. But he would be very politically incorrect, you know. And I remember afraid to tell him I was pregnant with my first child, because he'd stop funding me. I mean, he would say that, you know. I mean, what are you going to do now? You know, look, I won't even go into what he'd say, but my mother used to always say to me, you know, love many, trust few, always paddle your own canoe. And you can only deal with yourself. You can't change other people. So, I mean, and another saying I think which is great was, you know, all the fish would still be in the sea if they kept their mouths shut. So, and that's, I think, a great one. So, you know, smile to yourself, think a little bit higher, and don't always respond. And you know, the best response is by being successful. So, but for sure, I've come across it. I mean, you know, I remember, you know, hiding my pregnancy bump on numerous times in case, you know, and I've grown up a little bit since then, but that was, it's, you're afraid what people think, you know, that makes me sound terrible, but that is the truth.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're not terrible. You're being honest, Claire, and I think hopefully times have changed a little bit in since then, but it's not actually that long ago. I think your eldest is 15.
He's 17, but the thing is, if you're, when you're starting up a business, people are investing in you, and really you are your product. So at the very start, when you don't have turnover to substantiate what you're doing, so they're constantly, they are going to think, whether they say it or not, are you going to be there for the long term? And you know, once they got to know me, they knew that they weren't getting rid of me quickly. But you worry, you know, and I think you just have to be strong in yourself and know that you can't change anybody else, but just keep working on it.
Okay, cool. And Sharon, anything to add to that before we finish up?
No, just that I would totally agree with Claire, and I've gotten much better at not tolerating it at all and actually calling men out on it. And if you do, you know, it's funny to watch them squirm. So I highly recommend that approach.
Excellent.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Excellent advice to finish it up. And huge thanks to Sheila Daly of Enterprise Ireland for your time and your effort and commitment in coming today. That was really useful. To Claire Hughes and Sharon Cunningham, thanks so much. You guys are exceptionally busy, and we very much appreciate that when we pick up the phone or send an email that you will help us out. We love that about all of our clients. So thanks so much. To everybody else who logged on, thanks a million. Really appreciate your time today. I know it's really sunny, so it's hard to be inside. And if you've got a good innovative idea that you believe has good potential and is scalable, please contact us, and we'll have a chat, and we'll direct you either to keep you and talk to you ourselves, or to refer you to the local enterprise office or Enterprise Ireland or New Frontiers program, or some of our colleagues in the Enterprise Support Network. So thanks to Aidan and the rest of the guys in Southeast Vic for helping with this today. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.